Hey everyone, today I'm going to discuss with you how to improve your photography when we're in the midst of a pandemic. I believe that a lot of your progress in any sport or pursuit like photography is very mental, and you can improve without even taking photographs, and you can improve by going non-traditional routes, meaning you're not able to shoot what you normally would shoot. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mik. I'm a professional event photographer. I've been doing that and teaching photography for over 10 years, so I am coming from that perspective. So the first thing we can do is dive into the metadata of our work. And we can do that by opening the library module in Lightroom and selecting different lenses or focal lengths. Now, you shouldn't have a certain percentage of every type of focal length in your work, but this can be a guide to tell you where your shortcomings are, maybe where you can improve upon, what kind of focal lengths you can use more of. For me, I personally shoot a lot of telephoto focal lengths because I really love dialing in on someone and getting these big moments, these big interactions, or these big emotional highs, and sometimes I blur out my background. Now, I provide context by shooting over shoulders, shooting through things, but a weakness of mine, which I can see in my metadata, but I didn't really need it to know this, is that I don't really shoot wide enough. I shoot my establishing shots. I've done a video on the importance of establishing shots and other shot types, but I usually just get them out of the way. We tend to do what we love, and we get good at what we love, or we love what we're good at. Either way, we end up focusing too heavily on things at times. So looking at your metadata, you can see what you're doing well, what you're not doing. You can identify weaknesses, not just are you shooting with this type of lens enough, but you can look at your work, and then in a dispassionate way, I really recommend you say, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? My next tip for you guys is to keep a journal while watching the work of some of the masters of cinematography. For me, one of my favorites is Lubezki from Birdman and Children of Men, two of my favorite movies. I also really like Rodrigo Prieto, who I got to actually photograph on an assignment once. But what you want to do is keep a journal and write what you like. Write out, really analyze the work too. Don't just say, oh, I really liked that shot or this shot and why, but talk about what that shot made you feel and how that cinematographer is using the language of cinema to kind of navigate your emotions as a viewer. My third tip for you guys is to get into street photography. Right now is a great time to go out and do some city shooting. Now, of course, you got to keep some social distance if we're still in COVID, when the COVID pandemic, when you're watching this. But I really think there's a lot of artificial barriers when it comes to photography. We think of wedding photography as separate somehow than event photography. We think of both of those as very separate than street photography. In reality, what I'm doing when I'm photographing an event is I'm documenting what's happening in front of me. And it's no different than street photography. Of course, with street photography, I'm a little free to just photograph what I want, how I want. With event photography, there are some staples, there are some conventions you need to follow, but when you're not doing that, you're really free to document it however you like. And so what you can do is do some street photography and practice what you eventually want to integrate into your professional work if you're a professional photographer. Number 4 is to read a really good photography book and take notes. Don't take notes. It doesn't matter. I think there's two ways to go about this if you're looking at other people's work. One, let it kind of slide into your subconscious and it's just influence for you. Nobody lives in a vacuum. We're all being influenced by others. And there is nothing wrong with getting influence from different sources. What I don't really recommend is looking at your peers, because what happens with social media is you get these hyperbolic kind of trends. These trends that spread rapidly and it just gets overdone and your work ends up being really derivative. So in other words, don't look at Instagram. Go back and look at some of the masters of photography and just either take it all in, or what you can do if you really like a photographer, you can see their work, and then when you go out and do your street photography or whatever type of photography, you can actually try to replicate it, because when you try to replicate someone's work, you're going to really explore the technical stuff that's behind the image, but hopefully you're going to understand that it is not the technical skill of the photographer that makes their work good. You're going to understand what it is they're really My fifth tip is to shoot a roll of film if you're not already shooting film. shooting film lets you really hone in on your craft because every shot is limited. You only have so many shots and you really want to make them count. When we're shooting digital, it becomes really easy to, even if we're not spray and praying, it's really easy to just end up overshooting. But with film, you have to slow down, really be conscious of why you're making the image because that image needs to count. What's the point of taking a bad image when you only get 24, 36, or maybe even 9 frames in the whole roll? For me, when it comes to photography and much of my life, the ultimate state for me is to be completely present with the task, and shooting film really lets me do that. Number 6, and this is going to be really hard for a lot of us to do. In fact, I have not done this yet, but I'm thinking about doing this. I will do it. But it's surveying my clients, asking them about my work. What is it that you like about my work? What is it you don't like, or do you wish I did more of? And in a dispassionate way, take the feedback, and if it's good, ask them to review you on Yelp or Google Business. If it's bad, take it in and say, okay, this is where I can improve. Be very dispassionate about how you respond to this. That's really important. It's really easy to be scared and not want to know what they think, especially if they're not a repeat client. Don't just ask your client of 10 years, like, what do you like about my work? Really try to ask anyone you've worked with, and most people will be happy to give you a survey, I think, when it comes to your work. So you can only grow from it. I strongly encourage it. I'll make a video when I do it. I'll let you guys know how it turned out for me. Number 7 is to have your work critiqued, but with caveats. Far be it from me to think that I'm the guy who gets to decide who's qualified to critique your work. There really is no standard for it, but there are a lot of people that are not going to be very helpful to you. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide if the person is qualified or not. Some pitfalls, some things I would avoid are people that critique people's work by saying what they would have done. That's not helpful. Like, if they say, I personally would have preferred this or that, that's usually a bad sign. A critique, in my opinion, should be more about giving possibilities, giving technical notes like on why an image looks the way it looks, and really talking about if the person's intent is successful. That's really important, whether you discuss what the intent is or you can just say, this is what I am picking up from the image, and then the person on their own can say, okay, that was my intent or that was not my intent, and they can learn from that experience. When it comes to my students, I make sure to give them possibilities, not my own preferences. So when I'm looking at their work, I say, this is a crop that could also work. That's a crop that could work. But I tell them it's not necessarily better. And when I do have an opinion and I'm not quite sure if it's on that border of opinion or fact, what I do is I kick it to the class and I ask for everyone to give feedback. And I think that's also a way of me checking myself to make sure I'm not full of it, right? So get critiques, but another thing to avoid is do not post your work on social media, and don't gauge if your work is good or bad by how many likes it gets. If you look at Instagram, the work that gets the most likes is basically like the sugar, salt, fat of photography. It's like the Big Mac. It just hits people really hard, but it doesn't really have any subtlety often. There's a lot of things that do really well on social media that does not make an image a objectively good piece of artwork. So I hope these tips help you guys out. Let me know in the comments what you think. I want to give you guys one bonus tip, and that would be to just experiment with new things, different lighting setups, etc. I'm going to show you guys what I did for this video. I tried something completely different with my lighting setup. I haven't looked at the footage yet, so I don't know if I'm going to like it or not, but it was a lot of work. I don't have my usual lights because a lot of my lighting gear was stolen recently. And what I'm doing is I'm using some basic like flood lamp, like large LEDs for like a workshop, I guess it would be. These are not expensive. I got them at Costco for 30 bucks each. And let me know if they do the job. So last tip, experiment with different things. Now's a good time to do that. So here's my 7D Mark II, nothing fancy for recording videos. A little bit of a chaotic mess here. But as you guys can see, my boom mic is above, and the lights I'm using to film right now are just these like LED lights for a shop at Costco. They cost me about 30 bucks each. So I have the other one precariously hanging right here off a light stand. Again, you guys Don't need anything fancy to do a lot. It's kind of like the same as you don't need a fancy reflector if you need to reflect light. Anything white will work. A foam core board is fine, etc. All right, I hope you guys stay healthy. Let me know how you're holding up during the whole COVID-19. If you're watching this video when it's already passed, good. And remember, you can use these tips at any point. You do not need to wait until you're quarantined and not able to work or not able to do your normal type of shooting. All right, I'll see you guys soon.